Hi, everybody. Let's talk about week 11. For this week, you're going to make sure you finish up your synthesis paper. So don't forget that that's due by Monday night. And then we're really just full steam ahead into the research paper now at this point. For this week, what we're focusing on is finding sources. So you already have 3 sources. If you choose to use the ones that you use for the summary critique and also for your explanatory synthesis paper. Hopefully, those give you a good sense of can you find good sources? Can you find credible sources? Do you like your topic? Do you know how to use these sources? You already have some works cited citations for your sources. So if you're sticking with the same topic, then you already have 3 of your 8 sources done. So what you need to do this week is find at least 5 more. Don't forget that you need 3 types of sources. So remember, that means that you would cite them differently. So that could be a web page, a magazine or newspaper, and a database. If you had the opportunity to do an interview over spring break, that could be your 3rd type. You can use YouTube and Twitter, things like that. All of that is fine, but remember, it's citing sources 3 different ways. So they can all be electronic, but just keep in mind that you have to cite them 3 different ways. Okay, so how many do you need? 8 total. I will tell you, most of my students end up somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 15 to get this whole paper done. Remember that you're not just arguing the problem and whether this is a problem or not. We're not going to argue about whether or not this is a problem, because leaders don't do that. Leaders don't say, well, let's really discuss whether this is a problem. Good leaders don't do that. They say, okay, here's the problem. What are potential solutions, and which one should I choose? So you're going to pretend that you are somebody who has to make these choices about these problems. So what you're arguing in your paper is what is the better solution to the problem. So I want you to be focusing on solutions, not problems. Okay, because remember, people who just talk about problems are complainers. People who talk about solutions are leaders. So I want you to get into that mindset, understand that that's what we want to focus on, because that's how we're going to solve the world's problems, not by just running around complaining about all our problems. Okay, so solutions, we're arguing and discussing potential ways to solve these problems and what you think is, based on your research, is the best way to solve the issue at hand. So you're going to do a couple things this week. Besides turning in your synthesis paper, you're going to join me in the discussion board, where you are going to have a little more discussion about your sources. And also, you're going to type out your thesis statement. I've given you an example and talked about what does that need to have in it. So just briefly, let me pull that out here. Okay, so when I go to discussion board 11, you can see what you're going to be doing this week is I want you to either attach, so just do it as an attachment, or you can copy paste your source, as long as it's short, please. If it's long, please attach. A new source for your research paper. Then I want you to include the works cited citation. In the week 9 discussion board, where you did the summary critiques and gave me your 3 citations, there were still a lot of problems with citations. So I want you to take a second swing at that. Give me one more source. Give me the citation. Make sure you look at that feedback I gave you from week 9 so you don't keep making those same mistakes. Also, I want you to answer the question, do you have 3 types of sources? Okay. Then the second part to this is I want you to write out a thesis for a potential thesis for your paper. You are not stuck with this thesis. I just want to see that you kind of have an idea of where you're going, to give you a target to shoot at. So you need 3 parts to this kind of thesis. You need the problem, obviously, that you're discussing, what potential solutions you're going to pursue, to delve into, and then which solution are you then advocating for overall. So I've given you an example. Even though some schools are calling for pass-fail grades in college courses that moved online during the pandemic, students should be awarded letter grades because of the future impact on their degrees. So the problem is that all these courses moved online, right? And what do we do about student grades? Well, there are 2 potential solutions to that problem. Some schools are calling for a pass-fail. Some K-12 schools are going that direction, and some people are calling for higher ed to do the same. However, The other solution is to continue giving them letter grades. I would argue that you need to continue getting letter grades. And the reason for that is if you showed up, transferred to another school with a bunch of pass-fail grades, so just a P next to a class rather than an A, B, or C next to a class, some of the universities may say, well, we'll let you count that as elective credit, but you can't actually count that as English 102. Or if it's required for your degree plan, they may make you take it over again because pass-fail doesn't tell us how much you knew the content. So while pass-fail kind of puts a Band-Aid on the problem for today, it doesn't really help you down the road. So that's what I would argue is I would rather serve you for the long term. So I think we should stick with letter grades. So anyway, you can see there my big problem is, okay, we've taken all these students and forced them to go online, and that's not necessarily how they learn and what they chose. And so there are two potential solutions to that: the pass, fail, or regular letter grades. And then you can see that I'm arguing that letter grades are the solution to this problem. Okay, so that's what you're doing in the discussion board. That's due by Friday. So what's due by Sunday? Well, I want at least 8 of your sources. You'll notice that I have titled this 8+, because again, most of my students end up needing 12 to 15 sources to get this whole thing done. Please ignore the compare contrast synthesis quiz. We're going to skip over that because I worry that some of you don't have your textbooks. It's not a huge deal. You've done compare contrast before. This would just be compare contrast using sources. And so I'm going to assume you know how to do compare contrast, and we're just going to kind of skip that. You will see that in the gradebook. I need to go clean up the gradebook some, simply because there are assignments that I've adjusted or changed or moved. Because I moved them online, Blackboard automatically creates a new grade column. But if there's not a grade in there for that particular assignment, it's not being counted against you anyway. That's how I have my gradebook set up. So if you see assignments in there that we have not done or that we have skipped over, it's not hurting your grade in any way. So I would like to try to get that cleaned up, but to be honest, I'm just trying to keep up right now. So what you're going to do over for your assignments then, besides watch this video, which I will upload here in just a little bit, you will click here to turn in your 8+ sources. So you're like, okay, Ms. Wisher, what do you want? How do we turn in sources online? Those of you who had me for English 101 know I love to do note cards where you would put each works cited citation on a note card and you would number those. If you would like to turn in your 8 sources that way, where you just have a note card, and so for this one you'd have 8 note cards, and you put the works cited citation, 1 works cited citation on each note card, and then give it a number. You can do that. The way you would turn that in then is you just snap a picture of it and turn that picture in here, and that's perfectly fine. So if you've done note card research before, you know what I'm talking about, and you like that style, feel free to continue doing that. I will take it either way. If you don't know about note card research, I'll be very honest and tell you that it's a lot harder to teach online, so I'm not going to focus on that a whole lot with you guys this semester. But so if you don't want to do note cards, or you're not sure what I mean by note cards, here's what I want you to do. You're going to turn your sources in. Sorry, this moved a little slow. Here we go. You're going to turn your sources in like this. So you'll title it with your name. You'll give me your topic or your thesis if you have it ready to go. And then you're just going to list out your sources in alphabetical order in proper MLA format, and you will number them. Now keep in mind, when you make this a works cited page, you will delete these numbers. These are simply for the process of research that you're numbering your sources. Those need to come off for your works cited page. Okay, so keep that in mind. I've put some notes down here about doing works cited citations. Keep in mind that there are very specific rules. Do not use EasyBib to format your citations. They're not correct, and I will know that you did it because I know why EasyBib is wrong. So do these by hand. And you're saying, okay, Ms. Butcher, but I don't remember how to do these by hand. Well, don't forget that you have Al Purdue, right? You can just Google Al Purdue, MLA, and the internet's moving a little slow today. But you just go to the formatting style guide. I imagine most of your sources are going to be electronic at this point. So you'll just click on, once you get to the style guide, choose what type of works cited citation that you have. Okay, most of them will be electronic, and then just follow the directions for how to create the citation for the type of source that you have. All right, so that's the best resource for you is to use OWL Purdue. Okay. Also, remember you have your MLA handout if you brought that with you. That was also posted in week 1 in the assignments folders. So feel free to go back and use that handout. I will be checking that your MLA citations are correct. Make sure you use italics where you should use italics. So make sure you have all those things done correctly because you will need them. You will need that for your paper, and that's what I'm grading you on. Okay, so make sure that all happens. Okay, so just a couple notes about that, just some reminders about how to do MLA citations. Notice the dates. You only do 3 letters, and so the only month you spell out completely is May, but it's day, month, year on the works cited citations. Also remember the indenting. You indent every line after the first line. This is called a hanging indent, and we'll talk more about why that is later. Also, I have left my URLs blue. That's simply so if you are interested, you could click on the source and see my source and compare it to my works cited citation. So if that's helpful to you, I have left the links in there so you can see, okay, this was the source. This is how she created that works cited citation. But you should not do that. You should not have, these should not be blue for you. You will right click on these and you will click remove hyperlink. That will make them not be blue anymore. Also, you want to make sure that you separate these. You do not want major blank spots in your works cited citation. So you can separate a URL at any symbol, and I've listed a couple of possibilities down here. But wherever that is, after that, you just hit the space bar, and then that will move that. And then I hit tab to force, everything back over. Sometimes you have to hit enter and then tab to actually make that thing jump. Okay. Also remember with your URLs, you do not include the https://. You don't include this guy down here. You start with the www. Okay. You should capitalize all the important words in the title, even if your source didn't, because if they do it in APA format, you don't capitalize any words except for the first word on a title, but we're doing MLA, and so you need to capitalize all the important words even if they didn't. All right, so you're going to create a list of at least 8 of these. They need to be alphabetical, and they do need to be numbered. So I will also post this example. I will link to OWL Purdue for you. And one last thing I want to remind you of is to get into the databases to find more sources now that you're working probably off campus. I assume all of you are off campus at this point. Remember, you'll go to current students, click on the library, go to research databases, and then when you choose a database, and don't forget, you can do academic search complete, elite, premier, ERIC if you're doing education, New York Times if you're doing a current event. So we have lots and lots of sources. So let's say I'm doing something really current event. Remember, New York Times normally only lets you 5 articles a month. You may have already used them this month. So I can click on New York Times, and then basically we have an institutional license that gives you all of the New York Times articles that you want. Because you're off campus, you will have to create a login if you have not already. You will type your first and last name. You will give us your student ID number followed by your institution code, and that's found over here. So you will put in your 6-digit ID number and then capital C, capital C. If you've never created an account with Swan, you'll have to then click submit, and it will ask you then to create a password. Otherwise, you just enter your password and you can jump into the databases like normal. You just have to show that you actually are a Crowder student when you're not on the Crowder network. Okay, so just a couple things I wanted you to be aware of since we are online right now, of how to access sources and how to find resources to create your citations. So for this week, discussion, watch this video, add to the discussion board by Friday, where you'll talk to me about some of your sources. Also, if you're having questions about your sources, you can always email me, but you can also post your questions there. I will check that frequently and try to answer your questions as soon as possible. So feel free to throw a question in the discussion board, shoot me an email, or holler at me and we can set up a Zoom if you want to talk specifically about your topic, your paper, your sources, anything like that. Okay, so discussion board by Friday. This will be due sorry, 1 second. For you guys, this is due on Monday. There we go. I was trying to remember if it was Sunday or Monday. So I've outlined it kind of here, what you need to do for the week. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you online.